Welcome back, Slippy Sliders. I'm Lupinefiasco, this is Daily FaB Gameplay, and today we're playing against All In Together, Guardian Extraordinaire, piloting Valda, Seismic Impact. For anyone new to the channel, I'll review replays of games I played on the Talisher.net client after enough time has passed, so that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my games. I'll talk through turn cycles and the lines that I would take now, comparing them to the lines I took then at the time of recording. We either learn from our mistakes or reinforce good play patterns to tighten and optimize our gameplay in the future, to take down paper events and walk away with that shiny, shiny cardboard. For anyone who hasn't done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. It's the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see every new upload from Daily FaB Gameplay. You can find a Fabery link to the deck list I'm playing here in the video description below. You'll also find a link to my Patreon page where subscribers get access to matchup guides for all my tournament decks and weekly bonus content, including draft reviews and deck techs. Want to tighten and optimize your gameplay in real life? Use my affiliate link in the video description to buy your very own Codex journal, and be sure to use code LUPINE10, that's LUPINE10, at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Finally, Daily FaB Gameplay is brought to you in part by Hemel from The Bazaar. It's never been more affordable to play in the flesh and blood. Players have been buying the cards they need from Hemel for years. I started buying from him in 2023 and have never found a better deal. The Bazaar's prices are the lowest for singles, class sets, and full sets, including new releases. High Seas, singles, and more are available now and ship both internationally and domestically. Message Hemel on Blue Sky, Discord, email, or Twitter to see what he can do for you. Grab your claves, take up your mantle, and let's get into it. If you want to see this game played from Allen's perspective, it should be available on his YouTube channel. There's a link to that channel in the video description if you want to see the sort of hands and arsenals that were informing his blocking decisions. This is the fourth game we played in a series of 4. I'm going to end up taking this game, but it's close. I wanted to show some of my decisions that were informed over the course of the last 3 games. This is about a 50-50 matchup, I think. There's play on both sides. It's winnable from both sides. It just comes down to how Valda's attacks are going to line up with whether we want to keep big hands or not, if we can get off those big impactful Bonds of Agony turns. So let's just get started. We lost the die roll here. We are going second. Allen and I talked about this. Is it better for either of us to go first or second? And there isn't a good consensus, because Valda does have some nice setup turns she can put together, which would mean that Slippy wants to go first so that Valda can't set those up. Slippy gets to set up the 5-card hand at the same time. If Valda goes first and spends that opening turn just setting up, especially tucking an arsenal, that means that we actually have the ability to disrupt, and we see this opening hand has Mark the Black Widow. If we set that on turn 0, then maybe we push some damage over the top of blocks with Razor's Edge, Valda banishes a card, and then draws back up at the end of our turn, so we didn't really do any hand damage, whereas if we go second, Mark of the Black Widow has a very relevant on-hit. Let's see if Allen is going to give us the opportunity to filter this hand. The answer is no. So given that this hand cannot adequately play Surgical Extraction, I want to pitch it to a Clave. What I'm looking to do is hit with the Clave so that I don't need to flick knives in order to turn on Mark of the Black Widow. We're going to keep Razor's Edge as a reaction to get over the top of whatever Valda blocks with, and then I'm probably going to Arsenal the Infiltrate. Over the course of these games, we found that Valda just wasn't playing Command and Conquer, and Allen's explanation for that was it just doesn't work with what Valda's trying to do. It doesn't crush, it isn't a Guardian attack, so it doesn't benefit from Seismic Surge. It's just a generically good card that doesn't play into Valda's strategy. Now that might not be the case with the Valda that you're playing against, but it was the case with this one. So it isn't like I'm trying to stay off of Arsenal to avoid Command and Conquers. and Infiltrate for 3 with no go again just isn't super threatening. So I might want to arsenal it to just have more play off of a smaller hand if I am forced to block on Allen's next turn. Or if I draw a handful of reactions but no stealth attack, it'll be nice to have a stealth attack that I actually can put reactions on top of. The mark gets covered by Sink Below from Arsenal. Got a Choke Slam coming for 8. We could afford to take this crush effect. The crush on Choke Slam is that we cannot give bonus power to our attack action cards. We have an Orb Weaver Spinneret in hand, which would obviously be impacted by the Choke Slam, but we could also just anticipate arsenaling that card. If we blocked with a single Double Trouble, we could pitch the second Double Trouble into Hunter's Clave, attack with Infiltrate, attack with Leave No Witnesses, arsenal Orb Weaver Spinneret. We could even Flick Knives in order to clear out a dagger slot for a Calicera. The thing is, if we take that line, the Double Trouble is worth 1 point offensively and 3 points defensively, and I am trying to keep up with Valda's value here. Guardian is very good at eking out extra points of value, with Seismic Surges allowing for 2-card 8s, and especially as Valda starts to pump out more Seismic Surges in a turn, we are going to get significantly outvalued, so I need to be cognizant of the numbers game. If my Tunic was up this turn, I think I would be looking more seriously at taking 5 here, letting myself get crushed, because then my second Double Trouble in hand would be worth 2 points offensively. From one Clave, use Tunic, then a second Clave. We would get to Flick Knives, making it worth 3 full points of value into Infiltrate, Leave No Witnesses, Arsenal the Spinneret. But as it is, I am more inclined to block with both Double Troubles, play my Spinneret for +3, Infiltrate for 6, and then end on Leave No Witnesses. Allen did already use his Crown of Providence, so he does need to respect Leave No Witnesses. It might just be a 4 block from hand or arsenal, but in the case that it isn't, we're getting a wheel card that Allen may have needed for his turn. This could totally be wrong. One of the trends that I noticed over the course of this series was that I wasn't respecting the Calicera enough. I wasn't putting in the work to get that first Calicera, and that occasionally came back to haunt me, where I wouldn't be able to pitch a blue to dagger CNC, or I wouldn't have an easy pitch outlet to Codex and then CNC. So this might be wrong. There is absolutely an argument for just taking the 5 here, getting crushed, sending back 2 points of offense from the Double Trouble and setting up a Calicera on the next turn, but I am going to choose to block 6 here. So now we get Pummel, which I did not put Allen on, and in this case, now we don't necessarily get rewarded for this line. We're going to discard the Spinneret. We're going to send Infiltrate into Leave No Witnesses. Leave No Witnesses doesn't have a target. But now our play in hindsight looks much better. Now, I'm not saying that the hindsight makes it correct. Maybe if we could have put Valda on Pummel, this play becomes better. That being said, Valda presented 62 at the start of this game. It might have been more than that even. It might have been 64. We cannot put her on having one of 3 pummels in her second hand out of 64 cards. The 2 floating resources doesn't necessarily mean that we should expect a pummel. If we had kept the Double Trouble, then we would be discarding that to the pummel. We would have taken 3 more points of damage this turn. We would be sending Infiltrate for 3 go again into Leave No Witnesses, still flicking a dagger, but it means that our Double Trouble would have only been worth 1 point of damage rather than 3 points of block. So the play does get better in hindsight, but this pummel is really unfortunate, and I don't think just because we got pummeled that means that keeping the Double Trouble was correct. And we get to send Infiltrate for 3. How likely are we to play a card that we infiltrate from our Guardian opponent? Not super likely. Most of their deck is bad blues that we don't benefit from. Not necessarily bad blues, just blues that we can't play. Macho Grande is a great blue, but it costs 7, and that's hard for our deck to put together. We could rip a Sink Below, a Fade Foreseen, or a Shelter off the top, and that becomes much better. Maybe we get something like a Choke Slam, and our next hand has a blue in it, so we get to send Stealth Attack for 3 go again into Pitch Blue Tunic Choke Slam, and now that is a 2-card 11. So the Infiltrate isn't the most impactful on hit, but it doesn't do nothing. It isn't like playing it against Gravy, where it's either a bad blue or an ally that's hard for us to get value out of. The Infiltrate against Guardian can be relevant, and this list in particular is playing 14 blues at the moment, so it isn't super unreasonable that we could actually attack with something from Banish. We're going to play the Leave No Witnesses. This is so that I can get Leave No Witnesses into my graveyard for Codex of Frailty, and if I was to arsenal the Leave No and then draw a Codex, I would need to Snapdragons in order to get my full value playing Leave No Witnesses, then Codexing it out. So I don't want the Leave No in Arsenal because it would make it awkward for me to Codex. Now looking at this hand, it is sort of unfortunate in that our only stealth attack is Double Trouble. We don't have a great stealth attack in graveyard for Take Up the Mantle, and we would need to flick a Hunter's Glaive in order to mark Valda. Thankfully, she solves this entire issue for us with Put Them in Their Place. This is the Valda specialization. It attacks for 10. It has a crush effect. If it deals 4 or more damage, we discard our hand and draw that many new cards. And you could look at this situation and say, well, these 4 cards are kind of tragic. What if we just took 10, discarded all of these, and drew 4 more cards? Maybe then we'd find a Codex or we'd find some hand pressure. I did that in one of the previous games we played and just got absolutely blown out by it because Valda's effect says that she would make 4 Seismic Surges. Suddenly, her turn becomes something like block 9, sends Spinal off of a 1-card hand with 5 Seismic Surges. We just can't take that damage, and we can't let the Put Them in Their Place crush. So that means we're putting 3 cards in front of this Put Them in Their Place. The great thing about Assassin is even our worst hands usually block for 12. In this case, we only need to block 9 to cover the crush, and we get to arsenal one of these cards. The card that I want to arsenal, I think, is going to be Razor's Edge. This is turn 3, heading into turn 4. I haven't seen a Bonds of Agony yet. I really want to be able to turn on that first Bonds. So between Take Up the Mantle and Razor's Edge, one of them buffs 2, the other buffs 3. We're going to keep the Razor's Edge, stick that in Arsenal. Could be, or Weaver Spinneret. Again, considering that I maybe need to play more towards that Calicera. What would be interesting here is if we had kept the Calicera on our last turn, we'd be at 29. But here, we would have play. After that opening a dagger slot with Flick Knives, we could play Orb Weaver, Tunic, Calicera for 4, Arsenal, Razor's Edge. Be an interesting play. It would do literally something compared to this hand, which does literally nothing after we block 9. So we can maybe see some ramifications of that previous decision. But let's see if I agree with keeping the Razor's Edge, and I do. Playing towards that Bonds, we're just going to Arsenal Razor's Edge. We get hit by Seismic Eruption, which is going to make 3 Seismic Surges at instant speed on our turn. That is going to give Valda her hero power. The next crush attack has Dominate. See if that's actually relevant. It isn't always, now it kind of is. If only because we can't just put 3 cards in front of the Spinal Crush. The thing about this hand is it currently doesn't function. We do not have an attack, much less a stealth attack. So we have 4 reactions between hand and arsenal, but no attacks. Now, on the other side, we have Crown of Providence and we have Sink Below. So we have 2 opportunities to sink a card and try to find an attack, and if we find an attack, the crush effect of Spinal doesn't matter because we have 3 reactions, we have 4 reactions even. So we aren't impacted by the Spinal Crush taking away our go again. We only need 1 attack to fully convert our hand. So what I would like to do here is block with Crown of Providence and sink, I think, my Justinic. Again, we haven't seen a Bonds yet, we haven't seen a Persuasive Prognosis, but we have seen 3 Double Troubles. I think the Justinic is very risky, as opposed to something like a Spike with Blood Rot. Now we could sink a Spike. Our Tunic is up, but we still only can play 1 of these spikes with the Tunic. It costs 1. So the line here could be use Crown, sink a spike, try to find an attack action. If we don't find an attack action, we play Sink below and either sink the Justinic or whatever we draw from the Crown of Providence. But I like keeping the Razor's Edge, and I like keeping one of my spikes. This plan all goes to shit if we draw a Codex, because we would have this Razor's Edge in Arsenal that we wouldn't be able to play. But I think it's fine to get a little risky, again played towards just having an attack and taking advantage of a handful of reactions. I don't play the Crown of or don't block with the Crown of Providence, choosing instead to sink a spike with Blood Rot. I think that's fine. We get extremely lucky and rip an Infect off the top. If this Infect had been any reaction, then this hand is absolutely terrible, and our turn is pitch 2 reds for Clave, Tunic, pitch a third red for Clave, pass, lose all of our tempo. So not blocking with the Crown there, I really think was a mistake, but we aren't punished for it. We find an Infect, which isn't the best attack for us to draw, but it is a good one. Between Tunic and our Razor's Edge, we'll get to Infect for 9, threatening 2 more Blood Rots. So overall, a 3-card 13, those are great numbers. We do take 5 from the Spinal Crush, we get crushed, but as I said, that doesn't matter with all of these reactions. We're going to Arsenal a Justinic, which means that it is a good thing that we still have our Crown of Providence. If we draw 4 reds or 3 reds in the Codex, then we get to filter that Justinic out of our arsenal. If we instead draw Bonds of Agony, then we're in a really good spot. The Tear Asunder into Crush the Weak is pretty unfortunate for us here, because we very likely get crushed. We can play around the crush effect by blocking with one of our 3 blocks and Crown of Providence, but we are going to get Tear Asundered, which means that we would also be losing 2 cards from our hand, so really putting us on a 1-card hand. And because we have this Justinic in Arsenal, the 1-card hand can't be Codex of Frailty. Between Justinic and Arsenal, and 2 Bonds of Agonies in hand, we do have, and 2 reactions on board, Flick Knives and Snapdragon Scalers, we do have the ability to send Bonds for 9 go again with an active on hit, and that could be enough. But is that really what we want to do? We still have 2 Take Up the Mantles in our deck. We just need to think about what our turn looks like if we take 8, discard 2 cards but keep 2 cards, if we block with 1 card and Crown of Providence and then lose 2 more cards. I think the line here needs to be block with Bonds of Agony and Crown of Providence, sink our Justinic, draw a new card, take 3, and then discard 2 cards and get to pick what those 2 cards are. The reason we can't just take damage from Crush the Weak, we can't get crushed, is that we wouldn't be able to play Bonds of Agony. So yes, while we could say, if this was something else, I don't know what it would be, but if this was something else, we could say, yeah, let's take 8, we'll discard Infiltrate Bonds of Agony, play Bonds of Agony, Justinic, Flick, Snapdragon, send 9, get interaction from me, play Codex of Frailty, and to leave no witnesses. That would be great, but we can't play the bonds after we get crushed. So we do need to block 5 here to make sure that we can do something. Because the other line that I'm looking at here is, what if we block with the bonds, Crown of Providence, sink Justinic, draw up something, discard that something and bonds, then we get to infiltrate Codex of Frailty, leave no witnesses, and that's a pretty solid line. We present an on-hit that Valda cares about. We also then present a second on-hit that Valda cares about. So snap discarding the Infiltrate and Bonds of Agony here is kind of interesting. I don't necessarily agree with the line. What I'm looking at is leave no witnesses, snap Codex, leave no witnesses. And this takes a lot of advantage of the possibility of Valda not arsenaling a defense reaction. If this card in Arsenal isn't a D-react, then this is a pretty good line. We're going to get to threaten the Arsenal twice, threaten the 2-card 8, get our Ponder, and give Valda a Frailty. But if this was something like Bonds of Agony, we potentially put Valda into a position where she is going to spend more resources blocking that than she would have spent blocking the Leave No Witnesses. We have 2 onboard reactions and a card in hand. Allen hasn't seen a Justinic from us yet. He doesn't know that that's what we sank. So he might be putting us on having a 9 power bonds, and if he blocks around that, maybe giving us 2-3 blocks from hand and a Gauntlets of Iron Will to block the 9, suddenly we don't need to use our Snapdragons, and our Codex of Frailty is threatening another card or all of his armor. That first Bonds of Agony is always really impactful. Bonds for 1 go again with enough reactions to turn it on will prompt your opponents to overblock most of the time. It's just such a devastating on hit. But this turn plays itself. Leave No Witnesses, snap Codex of Frailty. Thankfully, Valda plays the Sink Below from hand, not from Arsenal, which means that we still get to threaten the Arsenal. And even if the Sink Below did come from Arsenal, it would mean that Valda would get the choice of which attack to grab from Graveyard, and I would prefer for that not to happen. Sink Below in Arsenal is one of our best cards that we could possibly have. We're looking at a put in their place for 9. We really don't want to get hit by this. But unfortunately, this hand doesn't super work out the way that we want to. Kiss T-Tox is a fantastic combo, and if this Command and Conquer was anything else, any 0-cost stealth attack, I would be blocking with Bonds here and Sink Below. But instead, the Command and Conquer costs resources, so we would need to keep a full 4 cards in order to actually put this combo together the way that we want, which is Kiss, T-Tox, Command and Conquer. The Sink Below from Arsenal isn't going to cover the crush effect of Put in Their Place, so we are just going to take the more efficient line. I'm going to block with T-Tox and Sink Below. If this is a pummel in Valda's hand, then we just get totally screwed. But if it isn't a pummel, the Kiss of Death is going to be 3. We are still potentially threatening a T-Tox. There are 2 left in our deck. If it gets blocked, we still get to Command and Conquer, flick the Kiss, threatening 11 damage, 12 damage overall, and the CNC effect. Valda still doesn't have that Crown of Providence, so we're in kind of a good spot. I don't love blocking with the T-Tox. We could block with CNC instead and do Kiss, T-Tox, Bonds of Agony. But the Bonds is just 1. There would be no cards in our hand or arsenal. We only have 1 onboard reaction. So really no reason to take that chance. Really no reason to push the extra damage from Kiss when we're already getting good damage from Kiss and CNC. We'll see how many cards Valda wants to give us here. We've got a Binding of the Old Gods in Arsenal with Seismic Surges. This is a 2-card 10, which is really nice, but we are still threatening a good amount of damage. We are currently up, and we are looking at that 2-card 10 here. Checking our graveyard to see Bonds count, Prognosis count. How much do we value this Justinic? Again, we draw into a Calicera, and here's again where I'm saying I think I should have been clearing my claves at some point to set up for this Orb Weaver Spinneret, because currently it is just +3, and on an Art of Desire body that is kind of relevant, could do something, but we really want a Calicera at some point in this game. We have 2 Codexes left, 2 Command and Conquers, we have plenty of blues. We want to be able to set up that Calicera CNC line or Calicera Codex CNC line, and for right now we don't have it. The question I'm asking myself is, how much damage do I want to take, and do I want to set up this Justinic? Or do I want to block with it, play Orb Weaver, send Art of Desire body, Arsenal, Shelter? Do I want to block with Justinic and Shelter? Do I want to block with Shelter and Arsenal Justinic? I think, considering that we're at 21, and we need to eventually worry about Dominate, we can block with Justinic, send Art of Desire body for 6, and Arsenal the Shelter, hold on to it for a more impactful on-hit than Binding of the Old Gods, which doesn't have any on-hit. We are just sending 6 with Go again. This has the potential to draw a card. Valda's going to respect that and give us 2 cards from hand. And now we draw into a very unimpactful hand, which is hilarious because we are met with a very unimpactful turn. We have the Command and Conquer, which is good, but we don't have a stealth attack to give go again. We don't have anything that we can play T-Tox on. We don't even really have a good way to get value out of Surgical Extraction plus Concealed Blade, because we really are just pitching Command and Conquer T-Tox to play the Surgical, and there's no way that Valda's just going to block 4. Valda's not going to give us a 3 block from hand and Civic Steps or a defense reaction to cover it. If we're not presenting go again, so we have Surgical with card in arsenal, card in hand, there's no way that that's our best play. Even with 3 other reds in hand, our best line would be use Tunic, pitch a red, Clave, pitch 2 reds, Surgical. Valda's going to block 6. We can't get over 6 with just a Concealed Blade. So the actual best way to use this hand is to push 11 points of damage with a mark, and that is by pitching both Surgical and Concealed Blade to Clave. One of those Claves we're going to T-Tox to bring it up to 4, and then we will Command and Conquer. And that's still a fine line. I'm expecting Valda to block the Command and Conquer, which means that she will start her turn marked. When it comes back to us, we still have 2 Take Up the Mantles in our deck. We have all 3 of our bonds, or 2 of our bonds in our graveyard, so we have plenty of targets for Take Up the Mantle. We have our onboard reaction in Flick Knives, and we have 2 daggers with which to flick. So I feel fine about our position currently. We see a fault line coming out of Valda with 2 Seismic Surges. Finally, we do draw Take Up the Mantle. Unfortunately, we draw them both in the same hand with no stealth attack, with a Codex of Frailty. So really just not a good way to utilize these 2 Take Up the Mantles, but what we can at least do is keep them in deck. My line here, because we don't have the Clave, unfortunately, means that I want to keep this Leave No Witnesses. What I'd like to do here is block with Take Up and Shelter from Arsenal, cover the 7, take 1, then we will pitch Leave No Witnesses and Take Up to send Clave for 1 go again. I will play Codex, I will use my Tunic, and I'll send Command and Conquer. There just isn't really a better way to use this hand. We don't have our Snapdragons or Quicken to send Leave No Witnesses into Codex. I would like to do something more impactful than just play Leave No Witnesses and Arsenal Codex, which means that I am still having to leave 1, but it's better than overblocking, and we're going to overpitch, and at minimum that keeps another Take-Up in our deck so that we can eventually come to our big Take-Up turn. We do get pummeled here, and this does impact our line, unfortunately. The best thing we can do with this hand now is discard that Leave No Witnesses. We're going to Clave for 1 go again into Codex Leave No Witnesses. If we had a Calicera, this line gets much better. We get to Calicera for 1, Codex, Tunic, CNC. And here's where I'm really thinking I needed to afflict at some point this game, because a CNC here is a lot more impactful than a Leave No Witnesses. Valda still has defense reactions. Valda can give a 3 block and Civic Steps to cover the Leave No Witnesses, but she has to give us 2 cards to stop a CNC, and without a Seismic Surge, that really limits her options for what she can do with a 3-card hand. We do get a Quicken, we get to Arsenal a Concealed Blade, which is kind of unfortunate here, considering that we have another Codex of Frailty. But this Frailty token is doing a lot of work. We're going to get to block with 2 Persuasive Prognosis and cover the Crush effect. So we really aren't hosed if we needed to block 10 here, or if this was 10 and we needed to block 7. It would put us in a really bad spot because we wouldn't be able to clear our arsenal if we blocked for 9 with Prognosis, Art of Desire Body. Is there a world where we block with Art of Desire instead? No. If this Concealed Blade was a Razor's Edge, or a Take Up the Mantle, or a Justinic, then yes, 100%, because we would be able to get Prognosis over a 3 block. But looking at Valda's armor, the shield could still block, but Valda doesn't have Seismic Surges. The tech plating cannot block, so Valda doesn't have an easy 1 point of block to throw in front of Prognosis, meaning she'll be giving us a full 3 block. that we can't get over with just Conceal Blade. If it was Razor's Edge, 100%. We would keep Prognosis, we would send one go again, we would hope that Valda blocks for 3, and we would Razor's Edge to get over it. But because we can't present 4 with a Prognosis, we need to present 4 with Art of Desire Body. We're blocking with both procs. We will get to Flick Knives here as well, assuming that Valda blocks for 3. I can Flick, deal an extra point of damage, and then get a Clave out of my arsenal with the Conceal Blade. So we aren't losing any value here. We're going to see if we draw a card with the Art of Desire Body. We don't. A blue there would have been insane. We would get to Clave, Codex, CNC. Even a red would have let us Clave into Clave into Codex, Leave No Witnesses. As it is, we still get to Codex, Leave No Witnesses. If Valda doesn't have a defense reaction here, then she needs to give us 2 cards. She does. Let's do a quick check on what did Valda get. She got to put them in their place, so we know that that isn't going to be used on this current turn. But we need to try to strip some cards from Valda so that she cannot use it on her next turn. What I would like to do with this hand is Kiss of Death, Razor's Edge it, Tunic CNC. We're sending 14 points of damage. Kiss Razor's Edge is 7, CNC plus Flick Kiss. Sorry, it's 15 points. That is threatening a lot of lethal, getting at least 2 cards from Valda and even 3 cards if she doesn't have a defense reaction. We get to keep an Infect in our arsenal, which we know that we'll be able to clear. We don't have any codexes left, but we still want to make sure that we are able to convert our full next hand. We don't want to give up any tempo here. I think that we were supposed to play the Razor's Edge there, get our extra 3 points of damage, put Valda down into lethal range. Keeping the Razor's Edge means that we get to keep our Tunic up, but we just don't really need the Tunic at this point. I don't think we have any CNCs left in our deck. We definitely don't have any Codexes. We might still have a Surgical, but I'd rather have the Infect in my arsenal than get to and be pushing damage, putting Valda down to... She would be at 1 at the end of this turn, and we would have 2 Claves up. Valda hasn't shown us any damage prevention yet, so not Razor's Edging there is a huge mistake. We value our 3 points of damage way more than we value a single point on Tunic. So yes, we're putting Valda down to 4, but I would much rather her be at 1 here, and we just need to keep an attack, which we have in our arsenal. Here, put them in their place, would dominate very good. We can only cover 4 on this from hand with the sink below. We can also give our Tunic here, but the crush is going to happen. Thankfully, this hand isn't great, so it isn't the worst thing in the world that we have to discard this, but we're taking a lot of damage. We aren't just going to kill Valda on our next turn. What do we want to do? I think we want to block for 5 with Tunic, Sink Below, and we aren't trying to sink any of these cards. But man, how great would it feel if we were blocking with an empty Tunic rather than a full one, and just winning the game on our next turn. The hand that we draw into is still fine. We're getting to threaten 6 points of damage. Valda is going to need to block both the Infect and the Mark of the Black Widow. We are going to Flick here just to push a little extra damage. And then we get to Arsenal, Shelter from the Storm. I don't remember exactly what the issue was, but I know Allen did need to sequence this turn a little differently. Our turn hasn't changed. That's what it was. It was that he needed to pitch the Seismic Impact. So we got a Chokeslam coming in for 8 Dominate. Thankfully, we get to block this out with our 2D reacts and then end the game with Prognosis, T-Tox, and Justinic. So we are going to get there. But again, we shouldn't have even needed to deal with this turn. We should have been able to win on our last turn and not get got by any potential D-reacts. This will be enough to get there, though. We do pick up the win out of what was the end of a very good series of games. So again, overall conclusions about the matchup, very winnable from either side. Both heroes had play into the other. If Valda is nailing those impactful dominated crush effects, then Slippy's going to have a hard time. If Slippy is getting great value with Arsenal Disruption, Hand Disruption, then we are going to get there. You know, if you'll notice, we never bondsed this game. We blocked with all 3 of our Bonds of Agonies. All of our Take Up the Mantles showed up at terrible times, either before we had bonds in our graveyard or together with no stealth attacks. We did just get there based off of really impactful codexes and leaking some good damage with reactions, and that's even with some very likely misplays. Now, playing the Razor's Edge 2 turns ago, never having a Calicera, that really would have turned on a lot of our better turns. Definitely something that I need to play towards in future games. But this was still a really great series. I'm glad to know that Slippy does have play into Valda. I've got another game coming later this week that'll show you we have play into Victor as well. The Guardian's definitely scary for Slippy, but not impossible to beat. And I think that's a great place to be going into Calling Kansas City. Hope you enjoyed this game. Hope you enjoyed this higher quality of game. If so, be sure to, what have I been saying? Take up that like button. Head over to All In Together's channel too. Watch the other side of this game. Again, that link to his channel is in the video description. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's the best free way to support me. I have a Blue Sky, a Patreon, and a Discord, links to which are in the video description below. I will be back later this week with more daily FaB gameplay, and until then, take care.